an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Season 3, Episode 11. Nathaniel and I are just friends. In this episode, Rebecca is having sex with Nathaniel continually for months, but she is not ready for a real relationship, or so she thinks. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much I'm sorry, I just realized that I was about to say Megan, and I'm not positive. It is Megan. Okay, good. Thank you very much to Megan for commissioning this episode. Okay, so what we're going to do is spend about a third of my overall time talking about Dr. Akopian's solo at the beginning of this fucking episode, because that bitch almost made me cry during a comedic solo, because that was ridiculous. What? I know that she had been able to sing earlier in the show. She had that like Dreamgirls thing, but she really gets to just let it all out in this song, and holy fucking balls. I went back and rewatched it. That was how much I loved that whole song and her whole presentation of it. It was so good, you guys. Ugh. And I really wonder, I am certain, right, that therapists have to go through this kind of thing, where there is somebody who has such obvious patterns and they are refusing to see or address them. And you know how much potential there is in that person, and they simply don't want to actually deal with what's really going on. And that must be a torment as a therapist to watch that sort of thing, because like, you're not there to tell people how to be or force them to do things. You're there to help them figure it out for themselves. And whether you've already long ago figured it out doesn't matter. It's up to them. And that's a really quick way for me to just lose my damn temper, let me tell you. So yeah, this whole opening song is, this time it's going to be different. And it's a very like, maybe this time I'll be lucky from Cabaret sort of song, but about how hopefully this time Rebecca's actually going to be honest and really listen. And we see that Rebecca does, by the end of this episode, make some progress, because it seems at first that's not what's going to happen. She's talking to Dr. Akopian about her relationship with Nathaniel and trying to pretend that everything is completely healthy right now. And the thing is that she says at one point, literally, this is the healthiest relationship I've ever had. And it's because he is not attainable to me. And so I am not demanding any more than that. And I know that when he's like busy and can't text back or whatever, that probably is the reason why. And I don't expect him to be 100% available to me as I would otherwise. And it sort of takes a load off my mind. And therefore, I don't have the obsession kick in that would normally happen here. And the thing that is really tough about this is that you kind of understand where she's coming from in a way, the argument she's making makes some sense, you know? It's kind of funny, and this is going to seem unrelated, but I promise I'll bring it back. So I was just talking with Rashawn yesterday about a realization that I have had recently about my lifelong unhealthy relationship with food, and how I was poisoned at a young age against my own body. And most of us are, like a lot of us are sort of taught that our body is our enemy and that we need to constantly fight against it, wanting us to eat things that are bad for us or whatever, and gaining weight and yada, yada, yada. And I have really, as time has gone on and I've gotten older, that's only felt truer, that my body is my enemy. And I'm trying so hard to unlearn that, but it's really difficult because you don't trust it. You know, when you've been taught for so long, your body just wants things that are bad for it. You start to be like, well, obviously, if my body can't be trusted, then I'm not going to listen to it and I'm going to ignore it. And I've realized over the past few months that I really struggle with a blood sugar issue, and that it's not diabetes or anything like that. I've tested for that and I don't have it and I'm not pre-diabetic, but I definitely have a reaction to sugar that causes mood swings and is really not good for me. And it also, that drop in insulin after, you begin craving more sugar. And so your body demands it to replenish the drop, to get the insulin back into your system. And I always thought, before I really learned how this worked and the chemistry behind your body's reaction to it, I always thought that existing in that place of spikes and drops and cravings was simply the normal way to be. And so earlier this year, when I was trying to eat better, I would not intentionally not really eaten any sweets for a few weeks, and was startled at how consistent my appetite was. I wasn't going through cravings. I was just, it wasn't difficult for me to eat well. And I said to Owen in those first weeks, this isn't going to last, because it's always like this for a little while. It seems easy. And then something happens and it just goes back to normal. And that's what I said, back to normal. And I didn't know what I meant was it goes back because I will consume a bunch of sugar, start that cycle, and then feed into the cycle because I am not aware it's happening. And that feels normal to me. So over the past couple of weeks, now that I know that's how I react, I've been paying a lot of attention to my body and how I feel after I eat something really high in sugar. I can see and feel distinctly when it happens. And it's hard because I am so used to not being able to trust my body that I don't know how to let myself have a sweet and then rein it back in and keep that equilibrium, because every other time I have let myself go bananas after. If I get the slightest craving, I give into it and continue to give in over and over again, thinking, well, now we're back to normal. So what I'm saying here is, I feel like my struggle to find balance with the way that I'm eating and learning to trust my body again and the way that it tells me what's good for it and what it wants is similar to Rebecca trying to learn to find a balance in her relationships and learn to trust herself. She is in this place where she feels like her own enemy. She doesn't trust the signals that she's getting that maybe things are changing for her. She doesn't believe that if she puts herself in a situation like this with a serious commitment with a person that she genuinely likes. She doesn't believe that she's going to be able to keep a cool and not ruin things, first of all, in general for the relationship. But when Dr. Akopian says, "What are you afraid of?" Rebecca blurts out, "I don't want to die." And that hit me hard, because that's sort of what it boils down to. When you have really bad patterns that have led to suicidal feelings, in the end, that's the fear. You're afraid your mistake, you're choosing to trust something that shouldn't be trusted, is going to result in you making the exact same mistake again. And this time, nobody's going to find you. Nobody's going to be there. Nobody's going to know until it's too late, because this time you were a little bit more serious about it than you were last time. So I really appreciated that while her relationship with Nathaniel, I still find really questionable. Whether or not the show decided to lampshade the fact that Nathaniel used to be an asshole, it still remains that he did, and we're still kind of pretending that wasn't ever a thing. But setting that aside, the fact that Nathaniel is so prepared to risk everything, it should be something that she welcomes. This is a person who is in a relationship with somebody and is so unhappy with them and so much missing what they had with you, that they come out and tell you full on that they are prepared to drop that entirely if you say so. And that's what Rebecca has wanted so much, is for somebody to put it out, put it on the line for her. It's not just agreeing to be with her. It's a grand gesture, you know? And if you told her a year ago that a guy that she loves who has a girlfriend would tell her, "I would rather be with you, I'll leave her," I think that would sound like exactly what she's always dreamed of. But in this moment, after what she's gone through and really seeing her patterns, it's very difficult to separate that out. It's not like when Dr. Akopian says you're a very different person. I mean, she's what? It's been 8 months of the two of them sleeping together at this point. And she is seeing Dr. Akopian about 1 week from the time when she sleeps with Nathaniel the first time in the office. So that's 8 months of therapy, I'm assuming weekly, that Dr. Akopian has been watching her grow and change. And so when Akopian tells her, "You're a different person now," I tend to believe that. And obviously Rebecca doesn't. Rebecca says, "No, I'm not. I'm just barely more sane than I was." And that is really tenuous. And, oh man, I just really relate to that so hard. And I know that comparing relationship stuff with basically a sort of eating disorder is a weird comparison to make. But it is something that I have struggled with my whole life. And it really comes down to my relationship with myself. And I feel like that's what it is with Rebecca as well. It has to do with Nathaniel and an external relationship. But when you come down to it, it's about her trusting herself, and she doesn't. And there is nothing quite like the realization that you don't trust yourself. It's something that we all sort of take for granted, I think, that we've been taught in many ways not to trust ourselves. And yet there are other things that we have always felt we could rely on and know this is true. And it's different for everybody. But when you suddenly come to terms with the fact that a thing that you thought you had a lock on is the very thing that you have been fucking up. And she really was putting all of her happiness in the relationship basket, right? It's just one of those, like, she's been burned by herself before, and she doesn't want that to happen again. And who can blame her? And she talks very in great detail about how she knows what's going to happen. She's going to text him, and one night he's not going to text her back quickly enough. Or he's going to go on a trip, and she isn't going to see him for a few days, and she's going to get paranoid and, like, who knows, follow him. She has these ideas of exactly how this is going to go wrong. And what you could say to somebody who is sort of like pretending that they can see into the future is, okay, well, let's say that does happen. You're sitting here telling me it's going to happen. So how about we anticipate this reaction from you and figure out how we're going to cope with it? But when you are in this sort of headspace where you don't have the sort of trust that you will even believe that's what's happening, I think that's really where she's coming from in a way, is that, yeah, I believe that I'm going to begin to spin out. And if I do begin to spin out, the thing about me spinning out is that I won't admit that's what's happening. So while I am looking at the list of coping mechanisms for when I think that he's abandoned me, my brain is going to be going, no. You don't think he's abandoned you. He has abandoned you. And you're going to ignore your little list of coping mechanisms because it's just going to seem to you like that doesn't apply. That's not what this situation is. And again, I do really understand that, but I don't know that's correct. I don't know that Rebecca's 8 months of therapy have not taken any sort of root in her, that if she were to approach it that way with a list of coping mechanisms, that she wouldn't now realize what's going on. And, when I make the comparison again to my own relationship with food and my body, these past few months have been extremely stressful. Everybody's been feeling it. What with what's going on with COVID, with the election, Owen's had a lot of deaths in his family. I really fully expected that I was going to suffer a major setback with what I've been trying to do with exercise and nutrition. And weirdly, something has apparently sunk into my brain, because while I have not been perfect, despite everything, and despite some days wanting nothing more than to just lay in bed and let the day pass me by, I have still gone out to the gym and haven't missed a single day in 5 months straight. And it never felt like I was doing it because I had to. It always felt like, I'm not going to be happy if I don't go. That was really the thing. And that was when I started to realize something has actually shifted in a genuine way. It's about me and wanting to do something for myself that I know is healthy for me, and genuinely desiring a good thing for my body, not desiring to change my body because I'm mad at it or angry. And I feel like maybe if Rebecca were to put herself out there a little bit, she would be surprised to realize that her mind frame has changed, and that when he begins to pull away, if he were to do that, or he seems to, because he's not texting back quickly enough, what if she finds that she's not at all having the same reaction that she used to? Because what she's talked about with her therapist has really made an impression and sunk into her psyche. And she just didn't know until she put it to the test. It's the thing is about putting it to the test is that, what if you're wrong? What if that's not how it worked out? What if it turns out she did just go right back to how she had been behaving? And I do kind of wish that Dr. Akopian would ask her that question, because Rebecca's statement of, I don't want to die, while completely understandable and truly a devastating moment, and her acting in that scene was really good too. I would like for Dr. Akopian to point out, you have a lot of people around you right now who know what you're going through and are there to support you in a way that they weren't before, because they really didn't understand where you were in your headspace. And not only that, but we have figured out a diagnosis for you. And we're like really making progress in terms of you being honest. So whether things were to backslide, you're not going to ever be starting at square one again. It's never going to be like that, because you have a network and you have tools that you just didn't have before. That said, when somebody's worrying about attempting suicide again, it's, all of that can be sidestepped, and you can't downplay the importance of that sort of thing. So, Erica's in the chat. She says, man, this makes me think you would love my Mad Fat Diary. If I could afford to buy a series for you, it would be that one. I've heard that. Yeah. It's really been, those of you who also struggle with your relationship with your body and food and are looking to make some changes, can I just recommend the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast? It's two women who own a fitness apparel company, and they're two extremely fit women that I never thought would understand what I have gone through as somebody who's overweight and has always struggled with wanting to exercise. But they break things down in a way that has been like very important for me to hear, and has shifted my thinking on a couple of key things regarding nutrition and the way that I approach nutrition. And it's been hugely helpful. I haven't, I started at the very beginning, first episode that they ever did, and I've listened to 30. But I'm only in 2018. I think there's more. So, anyway, okay. So back to the actual plot of this episode. We, have Rebecca telling Dr. Akopian about sleeping with Nathaniel, and we cut directly from her trying to pretend that it's only happened once or twice, and then us finding out that it's happened 6 times. And we cut to Nathaniel with his girlfriend. What is her name? Is it Connie? Something like that. And he's talking to her over dinner. And it's well done, because this girl is obviously intelligent, and she is somebody who is a professional, and they have good chemistry together. And I like to see that the show, I feel like this is something that Rachel Bloom really tries to do. She doesn't try and make people's choices when they go with somebody else just be shitty. She doesn't try and she didn't even really do that with Valencia, even though Valencia was a bit of a caricature at first. You still kind of weirdly liked her, like I did anyway, So this, when she says that she texted him and he didn't hear from her, she didn't hear back from him, she's not at all being like, oh, didn't text me back, huh? She just kind of says, oh yeah, I sent you a picture. Didn't you get it? And he's like, oh no, I didn't. And he realizes that when she sent it, he was in the supply closet with Rebecca, which we find out is their place to go now. Somehow nobody has figured out what's going on except for the janitor. Oh, unfortunate. But it is a weird moment as a viewer because you don't know this girl, but you do know what's going on with him. And there's this sort of disconnect because you don't really know her very well. On the one hand, you don't want him to hurt her because you don't, that's not a goal. But you sort of are put in the position that Rebecca is in, weirdly, where there's not the kind of connection that makes you that invested in whether he's cheating or not. And that's clearly sort of how Rebecca feels. Out of sight, out of mind is kind of what it seems like she's feeling. She doesn't think that being in a real relationship would be good for her. But if she can have like half a relationship, then that's fine, you know? And the fact that she doesn't know this woman, she's never seen her before, it makes it a lot easier. And I can only imagine that's true for a lot of people who are like with somebody that they know is already involved, but that person they are already involved with is faceless. I would have to imagine that makes it a lot easier. If it's somebody that you know in person, I'm sure that makes it like a little harder for most people if you have a conscience anyway. And if it's somebody that you're friends with like on Facebook and they're posting photos of themselves with that significant other, that is one of those where I'm just like, I don't know how you do that and like continue to be cool. But so eventually Rebecca just says to Nathaniel, like, how about if we just accept that this is what's going on with us? And this is after a bit of a time jump, which we'll get to what's going on with Heather. And Nathaniel seems to be willing to accept that. And this I found really interesting because we know Nathaniel was pretty devastated by their breakup, even though he didn't want to come out and say that. And low-key, what's happening with Rebecca here is she's sort of doing to Nathaniel what Josh did to her when he was like staying at her house and accepting sex, but he wasn't actually giving her any sort of commitment. Even like he was pulling away from her in many ways, but she was trying to hang on and take whatever she could get because she was still in love with him. And that's kind of what's going on with Nathaniel. He's like willing to take whatever semblance of what he used to have he can get, even though it's hurting him and it's not the real thing. Even though I would imagine when he's in this with this other girl, he's thinking about Rebecca. And Rebecca doesn't really seem to like the thing that sort of pushes her out of where she's at in terms of trying to rationalize why this is fine is going to Daryl's baby shower and seeing Nathaniel with his girlfriend and all of a sudden being overcome, as she puts it, with feelings of guilt and shame and jealousy. And she has to like get out of there. I wish that Dr. Akopian maybe, or maybe she had thought of it herself. I wish that it had occurred to Rebecca what this is like for Nathaniel, because it seems like she does care about him. It's not like he's not a factor, but she's not really, she's sort of, I think, looking at it like, well, he likes me and he's getting to fuck me. And that seems like it's a pretty good deal. And he wants to be able to fuck me and I'm letting him. So he should be happy. And I wish that she would think to what it was like when she was, you know, greeting Josh when he got home from work with a blowjob. And yet then he would like take off and go to the dojo and disappear for the day or whatever. And she was desperately trying to pretend that she played ping pong and shit just to spend some time with him, because what she was getting, while better than nothing, wasn't what she was actually after. But it doesn't seem to have occurred to her that Nathaniel is in that sort of place. And it's a lot easier, I think, for women to assume that men are only involved in a thing for the sex. And I wonder if that isn't part of what's happening here, is her just sort of assumption that like, well, as long as he's getting laid, I'm sure he's happy. And we know that's not actually how he's feeling. And if she put it in terms of what she went through with Josh, it might make her realize that she's doing a little bit of damage here. This isn't like a victimless crime, even just if it were just between the two of them. Like, it's not cool for them to be hooking up because Nathaniel has a girlfriend, sure. But I would argue, even if he didn't, this would still not be super cool. Because I feel like it's just sort of drawing things out for him in a way that's not doing him any service either. So anyway, yeah, the two of them finally, like, when she sees him with his girlfriend, she is in the break room in front of everybody. And she's trying to tell him that they can't go to the supply closet because they just can't do that anymore. And everybody's in the break room wondering what the hell they're talking about. And I love at one point, Tim is just like, why am I crying? It was pretty good. And Nathaniel eventually just tells her when they're in their office together that he would, set aside whatever he needed to if she wanted to try again. And she doesn't answer him in that moment. And then we cut to Dr. Akopian asking her why she wouldn't give it another try when clearly Nathaniel seems to love her and she is interested in him also, really likes him, apparently has great sex with him. And yet, and then they have that whole conversation. And Dr. Akopian finally just says to her, you are capable and deserve love. And you need to realize that. So she goes to Nathaniel's door at the very end and texts him to make sure that he's home alone, which I appreciated because I wondered if she wasn't going to just barge in and find him with his girlfriend, and asks him, are you home alone? And he says, yeah, why? And she stands there and she's just trying to get up the nerve. And he suddenly comes to the door. And when he looks around, she's not there. And it seems like he sort of knew that she was there. And he's very hopeful. And it's a pretty great ending. It's very moving, So that's pretty much everything with Rebecca. I'm going to double back and talk about Heather. Heather has, first of all, it's a great jump because she's like pregnant, like only a month pregnant, I think. And she's hanging out with Hector and she's talking about the new appetizer that she created that has like raw fish. And she was about to eat it because she forgot that that's not something that a pregnant woman is really allowed to have. And she's got a great attitude about it in this moment. She's like, oh, that's right. I got to take care of the baby. Totally. And she's like really about the whole like being pregnant thing. She's being very blithe and just like, I love my new hobby, growing people. And talking about how her career is on track and how really like everything has come together for her and how glad she is at how her life is going. And she's looking around at home base and really feeling herself. And even mentions like how home base has become a place where so many people get together. And then we get a bit of a montage of what's happening with everybody, which there was this wonderful moment. I was so excited, you guys, where Valencia is meeting a new client and they're talking. And I was just like, oh my God, they're flirting. Oh my God, is Valencia going to hook up with her? And then you cut ahead months and months and they are together and they're like business partners now. And I'm just really excited. Oh, I am so excited. I don't think, has it ever been mentioned that Valencia is bi? I don't remember if it's ever been said before, but I am delighted at the direction that this took. And there's real chemistry between them. Like it was just crackling, I was really, really, really loving it. So we see them and then we cut over to, who's next? Because we do see Rebecca and Nathaniel flirting together. And that one, we know what's going on there. Oh my God, I forgot. We go to White Josh, who's talking to Josh, and talking about how he needs to get out of the country a little bit and go to do something that's like doesn't involve Daryl, because reminders of Daryl are everywhere. So he goes to volunteer with Habitat for Humanity. And then we go to, oh my God, all the people from The Office, Tim and Tom and Maya. I always forget her name, because we've got Paula and Sunil. Is that his name? And they are chatting together about how she just hired him, and they seem very excited. And when we go to the back with Heather and she comes back out again, much, much more pregnant, the whole place looks different. First of all, it's had a complete renovation. It had been like this weird sort of like green, and now it's a blue, and just seems a little bit more updated and nicer looking. And then we have another montage to see where everybody is at now. So White Josh has adopted a dog that Josh is calling Dog Josh. I have to say, you guys, that I wonder if this isn't going to result in him getting back together. Oh, is it Tim and Jim? Oh, thank you, Erica. I thought it was Tim and Tom. Tim and Jim. Oh, and she says, I bike 8 miles a day and still can't lose weight. I'll have to check out because they have a whole thing, Erica. Listen, go listen to that podcast. This reprise is one of my favorite songs of the whole series. It's so gut-wrenching. Yeah, that was really well done. It was really well done. Although I really pity anybody who has to sing at all after Dr. Akopian with that fucking opening. Like, I'm sorry, everybody who came after her. But anyway, with White Josh adopting a dog, dogs are like, if you were going to try and get an idea, a very low key, granted, idea of what it is like to have a child, in the sense that there is something that is completely reliant on you and requires a ton of energy, a ton of attention, and for you to shift a lot of your life around, a dog is a really great starting point. I I fostered a puppy when I was living in Philadelphia. And that was more than anything the moment where I realized I never wanted a child, because it was a not potty trained puppy who was constantly like yipping and looking for attention and getting into stuff. And I couldn't do it. And as far as I know, this is the first pet that White Josh has ever had. And a dog, when you've never had a pet before, he may have had, but it's a big adjustment. And if he does that well, he may find that a baby isn't such an insane leap. I just kind of wonder if he will wind up with Daryl again, because it does feel like when he gets back from the Habitat for Humanity thing, there's not a big indicator to me that he has really gotten over Daryl. I don't know what that would look like, but maybe, I don't know. I just kind of wonder. This dog is really, really cute. Is that a pug? He's got like kind of a weird boxer look to him as well. And let's see, who do we go over to next? Oh, we see Valencia and her girlfriend together, which is great. We see Rebecca coming out of the pantry with Nathaniel, obviously getting redressed, and him taking a call from his girlfriend. Ugh. And then we have the moment where she's talking to Dr. Akopian, and Dr. Akopian saying, I really thought this time it was going to be different. So what comes... Oh, and the other thing I forgot to mention about that montage is seeing Paula sitting by herself at the bar, and then seeing Sunil with all of the other people from the office. And Paula looking really salty about it. So, French Bulldog. Thank you, Erica. This is great. we saw Paula being really, really hard on everyone. Now, here's the thing. This is a surprise to nobody. I can be like this, and I just don't even realize I'm doing it. I really don't realize sometimes. And there was a guy that I was seeing who stopped me one time because I had really hurt him, and I didn't know. I just thought I had said like something that was just true about how he could be. I don't even remember what I said. And he told me, you don't realize how absolutely cutting you can be. And I remember stopping and being like, I guess I don't. And watching this with Paula, honestly, I 100% heard myself in her sentences with the way she's like, okay, I'm going to give this back to you so that you can make something that's actually presentable out of this. This isn't 8th grade. What are you doing? This is something that like, I'll see people post stuff on Facebook or on Instagram that they've made that they're proud of. And the voice in my head is absolutely unrelenting. Oh my God, I can't believe they would post that. They're happy with that? Oh, look at it. I would never let anybody know I did anything like that. And I mean, if you're going to post it, at least color correct it. Everything is like greenish. It's revolting. Oh my God, I'm going to hide this post. This is gross. Like, guys, I am mean. I am mean. And it's really the thing that people don't realize, I think, is when you're like that verbally, that's what's happening inside your head also. So people who are on the receiving end of that think that I have no idea how mean I'm being because it's like I don't hear myself or something. But the truth is, I am like that to myself in my own head so relentlessly that to me is the normal kind of criticism. And then after that, it just feels like everybody's kind of prepared for this kind of critique because I figure that's what everybody's internal monologue is like. And so they're all kind of used to it. And whether I say it, they're thinking it already. So whatever, at least it's being said instead of just being like danced around. No, not everybody's internal monologue is like that. And even if it were, a lot of people would then stop themselves and be like, wow, there's no need for me to be such a bitch. What's happening? I don't get that part though. Like I'm starting to, over the past like 4 or 5 years, I've really started to be like, ooh, God, you are mean. Just chill. They're just posting a picture of the spaghetti they made. That's literally all it is. You don't need to be like this. But it's because I have this voice yelling at me. I can't take a picture of spaghetti under fluorescent lighting at my kitchen counter. And there's a part of me that almost wishes that I could, because I go to take my picture of my spaghetti. I carry the plate over to the window so that natural light falls on it. I hold the camera at just such an angle. I make sure it's piled really close to the edge of the plate so that it looks full and abundant in the angle that I do it with a 3/4 shot. I am obsessive and I expect everybody else to fall under that category as well. And thank God they don't. We don't need more of that in the world. But I have that standard and I just have a really difficult time understanding that it doesn't need to be that way for everyone. And I don't need to express my disapproval. It doesn't have to, nobody needs to hear it. What is it adding to the conversation? What difference does it make if a post doesn't have a good photo? Now, granted, what Paul is dealing with is work and cases that can be won and lost. So in that sense, the way that the stakes work out here are different because there's more riding on it and it's the reputation of the whole firm in a lot of ways. But when you just beat people down, they don't get better. They don't respond unless they're a particular kind of person, and those people exist, but they're weaker a lot of the time. Most people don't respond to being berated with, well, now I have to please you. Most people respond to being berated with, well, fine, go fuck yourself. That's how most of the folks that I have worked with, and it's my reaction a lot of the time as well. And it results in low morale and exactly what we wind up seeing here, which is everybody sort of teaming up, feeling like she is the enemy. And there comes a sort of overall lowering of expectation because they all have agreed that this one person is super unreasonable. So now, not fulfilling the desires and expectations of that one person you've all agreed is totally unreasonable, doesn't feel like such a big deal because we all know that she's ridiculous. So, okay, I didn't write it well enough for her. What else is new? There's no pleasing her anyway. Who cares? And that's the cycle that happens when you have a boss that does this sort of thing. And the thing is that Paula doesn't realize that she's doing it. So Sunil showing up and working for them and then suddenly hanging out with all the other office people mystifies her initially. She has no idea why. Of course, we know. We saw her being really mean, first of all. And second of all, we saw the way in which they interacted with one another shift. But she doesn't seem to put those two things together. She thinks that this is him being brainwashed by the other morons on their team and doesn't put it down to her own behavior. And here's an unfortunate truth. If everybody you work with or everybody that you're friends with kind of doesn't seem to want to be around you or tells you that you're an asshole, maybe you're an asshole. Now, this is not universally true, but it's true a fair amount of the time. And I think a lot of us will tell ourselves, well, if they don't get me, then I'm better off without them anyway. And granted, that's certainly true plenty of the time. But I think that we've bought into this weird cultural thing where we believe that having haters is a pro. If people are rooting against you, that means you've somehow made it. Instead of maybe thinking about the fact that you've got multiple people who don't want to cooperate with you, that used to be on your side or used to be your friends. Why is that? Maybe look at that. And I look back at some of the ways that I behaved with some friends of mine, and I wound up getting ghosted and sort of thought well, God, what was their problem? I don't even know what I did. And in one case, I still don't know. I really don't. But in a couple others, I realize now how cringy I was acting, and I didn't realize it. And they never really actually called me out on it, but we weren't close enough for it to feel like a betrayal that they didn't. When this sort of thing happens, the last thing a lot of us do is really look at our own behavior. It's just, So eventually she berates Sunil in front of Rebecca, who bursts out laughing, which really, Rebecca's the other senior partner now. I feel like she shouldn't encourage this or tolerate this. But at the same time, she does say flat out, you were so mean to him just now, which she doesn't really think that this is her reprimanding Paula. But it's certainly the moment where Paula realizes that maybe this has gone too far. And eventually at the baby shower, Paula overhears them talking to each other and Sunil saying something about how Paula is so mean and each of them discussing different times where Paula has been really over the top. I think Jim says something about how she like put one of his briefs through the shredder and then pulled it out and turned it around and put it through again. And Maya tries to explain it with her like having to fight for every step she's gotten to take when she, you know, started off as a woman in this business years ago, just sort of being like, but then she can take it too far. And Paula's listening, just heartbroken at the fact that they apparently all think this about her. And like the final line of that scene, I think is Sunil saying, I used to love Paula, but now I'm with you guys, and her just running off like really shaken. And eventually she goes up to them when they're like at the table and they're playing like slappy, some game with slapping. And she doesn't bother to learn the rules. She doesn't try to like make this seem natural. She just tries to come up and sit down and be like, this is me being nice. And then slaps all of their hands really hard and gets like really baffled when they all get up and walk away and seem very irritated. So eventually Sunil comes over and she's just like, dude, what did I do? And he's like, okay, look, I may not do things the exact way that you would, but we're in the same class. You're number 1 in the class, granted, but I'm number 2 in the class. My work is good, and you know it's good. And the stuff that I do, it deserves to be taken a little bit more seriously. And you should acknowledge that I do well. And a couple of the others in here actually do pretty well too. And then he stops and says, except for Tim, he is a moron. And gradually the temperature warms up between them and she apologizes and he accepts her apology. And I love when she says, maybe I should go apologize to everyone else. And he's like, oh, them? No, they're morons. I really like the Mean Girls thing is like one of those that I like that this show will be like, it's a shitty thing to do, but also we all do it. It is funny and I can't be mad about it, you know? Sunil being added into the mix too. I don't think that I like really thought about him in terms of wondering where he was, but I did enjoy him a lot when he was on the show earlier. So I'm glad to see him again. And I think that this is a nice, like, because Rebecca sort of moved on from being such a key part of the dynamic in the office with Paula that they needed to give her somebody else to bounce off of, because Rebecca's hiding the fact that she's sleeping with Nathaniel from Paula. It doesn't come up until the end of the episode almost, where she confesses finally to what's going on. Because Paula asks why she also needed to bail from the baby shower. And when she finally confesses, Paula is like, dude, my husband cheated on me and you know that was devastating. Why would you do that to somebody else? And Rebecca has the grace to be like, I know. And that's part of why I didn't like tell you about it. And it's really the thing that I think makes her break things off with Nathaniel, is framing it as you're doing to someone else what was done to me. You're a very good friend and you know how hard that was for me. I mean, granted, it's not the same. They're not married, as Rebecca's very quick to point out, but nevertheless. And because of the fact that she didn't Paula's not aware of all this, she and Paula aren't feeding off each other. And really, it's in the script. I think Tim maybe says, great, now the sidekick's got a sidekick about Paula, which is kind of how it feels, but I'm not mad about it at all. So, okay, now to double back and talk about Heather. Basically, Heather's time jump results in her being disgusted with the world because she hates being pregnant. And I enjoy so much at one point when Hector is yelling at her, him saying, this could not have been more optional. That's such a good way to put it. And he points out that here's something that she decided to take on that she can't immediately quit. And that, I think, is really interesting. And I kind of would have liked that to be explored even more, because as somebody who loves to bail, I persevere through a good amount of like hardship with some things. But then there are some things where I'm just like, well, what am I doing with this? And then I just leave. And jobs were certainly like that for me for a while, because when you're young and you work in food or retail, there's always some place that'll hire you. It's not like it's necessarily going to be a good job, but you're going to be able to find some place to work very quickly. So anytime that a place was being shitty, I was just like, all right, well, fine, bye. And, I really understand being in Heather's position and just finally realizing that you're up against a wall and there's no way out of this except to just let it run its course, you know? So, oh my God. Yeah. Erica says, I love when she tries to distract him by saying, look, a podcast, and it works. Yeah. She's trying to find some way to seize control of her life again, because she has a month to go before she gives birth and she can't fucking take it anymore. And she tells him how she's like not allowed. She's taking a bath at the end of the episode, but apparently for pregnant women, you can't have hot baths. You can have lukewarm baths, which I don't know what that's about. But I gotta say, when I look at all the things that say don't take, don't eat, don't do when pregnant or breastfeeding, it's really depressing. She goes through all the things. She can't drink. She can't take like probably ibuprofen or like, you know, other supplements or drugs. She can't have sushi. There's probably a lot of things that she can't eat. She can't have coffee. I think it just sucks. And she's really lucked out with Hector, who is incredibly patient and trying so hard to make her happy and really bearing up under the brunts of her being like weirdly like blaming him, even though it's not his baby. And I just enjoyed a lot seeing their relationship through a moment like this. Like, this is the peak of stress between a couple, and seeing him just trying his best to like make things easy for her. All right. That's a good boy. And you know, but when at the end of the episode, when they, get to Daryl's baby shower, it's very funny. Like every time she's on screen when she's pregnant, she's just like, oh, I hate everything. So at one point he catches her trying to go and, go to like some skateboarding expo in a fat suit, which she claims will like protect the baby. And Hector has to stop her. And eventually he's like, all right, we got to go to this baby shower. You know that, right? And she doesn't want to go, but she goes and tells everybody that they can't touch her and don't look at me. And then at the end, she's in the bath and she says to Hector, you're right. A nice lukewarm bath does make everything better. And he says, why are you upset about a skateboard thing? And she says, no, it's about my whole life. It's about having to be responsible for things. I have a job and a live-in boyfriend and a baby in my stomach. It's all grown-up stuff. I never thought I would actually be a grown-up. I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know I'm actually going to pay taxes this year? And he says, yeah, I know how you feel. I don't know how insurance works. And she says, me neither. I remember this feeling. I went through it a lot earlier in life, but and really, the older I've gotten, the less upset about it I've been, because I've realized how much nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows how anything works. We all just know what we need to know for the moment. And then we go to Google and then we forget what we Googled and then we Google it again. And that's how that goes. So it's fine. You don't need to know anything. Somebody will be there to tell you. But, you know, Heather, like, has really been shielded from a lot of what life is so far. And I really wonder what this birth is going to do, you know? I don't know if it'll be anything, but I feel like that's got to be a life-changing thing. Like, that's a massive thing for your body to go through. And this is why when, not to get onto a whole other topic, but a lot of people will argue about abortion and say that, you know, well, you can just adopt the baby out. You don't have to raise the kid. And it's like, well, but what if you just don't want your body to go through the massively traumatic, altering drama and saga of childbirth and pregnancy, which, reminder, can kill you. We just don't talk about that anymore. We act like, oh, in 2020, people don't die in childbirth anymore. Yeah, they do. A lot. They do, though, still. Especially women of color, so Heather, be careful. So, yeah. Good luck, girl. Volunteering to do something like this. She clearly did not think that through any more than Rebecca thought it through when she volunteered her egg. All right. Well, I am over time. So, but this was a good episode. I liked it. And Erica says, I looked ahead. The next episode is the one with the spoilery title. Try not to check on the title of the next episode before watching. I wish there were a voyeur episode. Yeah, I accidentally saw the title of this one, so I don't really know that I'm going to be able to go to the next one without seeing it. I'll try, but it's unlikely. Let me just say that. Sorry, I'll just prepare you for disappointment on that. It's hard up in these streaming streets. All right, guys. Well, thank you again so much for listening. Thank you, Megan, for commissioning the episode. It's been fun. I hope you're enjoying the coverage. And I will see you next week, actually. There will be 2 more episodes, so stay tuned. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.